We're here in Glasgow to cover COP26. We are COPTV.
Hi, I'm Finlay and you're watching COPTV.
Hello and welcome to COPTV's final broadcast. We are all going to miss this.
But before we go, we've got some amazing content lined up. From Radical Girls to Chris Packham to Scotland's industry and our base, the New York Times Climate Hub.
Hi, my name is Charlie Bowen and these are my motorcycles, my electric one, and you're watching COPTV.
Hi Katie, thanks so much for being with us. Let's just start off with just talking about what your role is at WWF and why you're here at COP.
Well, thanks for having me. So I'm Executive Director of Advocacy and Campaigns in the UK. So we look at campaigning, we look at advocacy with governments across the UK. We do our policy work, our education work, our youth engagement. And it's all around trying to do two things. One is around keeping that 1.5 alive, which we'll come along to. And second is around making sure nature is our hero. And we want to try and accelerate this transition that we need to have within our economy and within our societies towards that low carbon, nature positive future.
So how do WWF hope to include more young people in climate action? I mean, how important is this?
I think it's absolutely crucial. Look, this is around the future of the next generation. I think there's a really clear distinction though. There's a piece, because what does frustrate me a bit is when sometimes some organisations say, oh, let's hear youth voices, and it's almost a distraction from the people in power. Now, I want to make sure that the pressure is on the people in power and they are using that power effectively. But I think youth voices are incredible at shining a light on their future and shining a light on those leaders in power. So I think having their voice in the room is critical. And I think this COP has actually been really positive around those youth voices. And that next generation, I have to say, for me personally, has given me a real sort of sense of momentum. It used to be, and I did my first COP in 2005, it used to be there was very much a choice between the old world and the new world. For the next generation, there is no choice. It's just the world. And I find that sort of spirit and motivation and forward-looking, really exciting and energising.
So with so many climate impacts, I mean, how does WWF prioritise what it advocates for?
That's a great question. Thanks, Josh. In terms of, look, for us, as you know, we're obviously a brand that focuses on species. But species are, it's not just around one elephant, one panda. It's around species, and at the top of that food chain of species is humans. So it's hard to sort of disaggregate or take apart and say we're focusing on this and this. It's the future of humanity and our planet to do that. Now, for us, climate change and nature destruction are the two main threats. So we focus on those two in a broad basis, and it's around tackling climate change and actually the food system. The food system is really where that sort of biodiversity loss and climate change go together. It's really at the crux of the problem for us. So that's an area we do really focus on because we want to make sure that we change our food system so it's having a more positive impact than it is at the moment.
So in terms of climate change impacts, how can the public, private and charitable sectors kind of come together in a comprehensive effort to fight against climate change?
Another really good question, thanks. Look, this is a whole society effort. And clearly there is some people who at the moment have more power, and I think everybody needs to use the power that they have and use it in every different arena that they operate in. Because I know, and I think, I'm sure I've certainly been guilty, I'm sure others have been, of going to work, doing my thing, but actually it's not just around your work environment if you're fortunate enough to work in a place like I am, but it's around your school, your office, your family home, making that case and using your voice and using the power that you have. Because I think collectively we're going to hear, listen, get ideas and move forward. it's going to be a whole transition for our, society, be it through, our electricity, our homes, our transport, what we eat, what we buy, how we travel. And actually that can be really exciting, but we're going to have to work together.
Great, well, thank you so much, Katie, for now. Let's check out some of the standout stories from COP26 today in Stella's final daily roundup.
A second draft text of the COP26 agreement has been released. There has been too much, to quote Greta, blah blah blah, and not enough action.
Today, outside the gates of COP, protesters from across the globe and different movements joined to voice their opinions and rage against the failure of world leaders and policymakers.
David Attenborough told us to have any chance of keeping within the 1.5 degrees global warming, we have to halt deforestation and begin reforestation within the decade.
Scotland are the first UK nation to ban single-use plastics in fast food packaging.
Private housing provider Mears, who have a contract for housing asylum seekers in Glasgow from the Home Office, have sent out a letter advising asylum seekers against joining the protests at COP26.
But the real question is, what are the real outcomes of COP26? And will we ever actually meet the 1.5 degree targets that are set?
What another brilliant roundup from Stella. Leading on from Stella's roundup there, she mentioned blah 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 and how the new text is very much that and there's not enough action within it. Would you agree with this?
I think, to be honest, we were a little bit disappointed with the text that came this morning. There was a text that came out yesterday. As I said to you before, it feels a little bit like a time warp, but the text that came up before, we said this should be the floor and not the ceiling. And it felt a little bit like today we were possibly scrappling around in the floorboards. So we were a little bit disappointed. But I think there is some reason for hope. There was some good stuff on nature in there. We're not at the end of the road. We'd like more clarity on how we're coming back to the table in terms of that 1.5 and in terms of that ratchet, and how we're going to up the ambition going forward. So I definitely think there's more to do, but I think in this process, for me, there's two truths. There's a truth is that we are further on than we've ever been politically, with the public, with businesses and policymakers, and that's a good thing. We've got to be, that's really positive and we should take from that. And there's been a lot of announcements this year from across the world. Good. We are nowhere near where we need to be. That's also a truth. And we've got to hold those two truths and we need to pull them together. And that's going to be around delivery, around integrity, and around on building what we've got together and working together collectively.
Brilliant, fantastic answer, thank you. Totally agree with the collective nature of that. But should we be worried with this new text?
We're going to build, we knew when we were coming into Glasgow, it was not the finish line. We knew it was around building momentum and getting effort. Would we like more effort? Of course we would. We see all this, we see the science, and we definitely like some more effort. And I would really hope that in the next few hours, we see a little bit more ambition in there. But if not, we're all going to work together. We're in this together. The people right now are ahead of the politicians. For the first time, they're really far ahead. And so we're going to take that energy, the energy we've seen from the youth movements, from a lot of the activists on the street, and we're going to use it and move forward. So there's something to build from. It's probably not everything, but definitely a good platform to go forward.
Fantastic. Very inspirational. But however, as we've kind of said, it is a disappointing text that has come out. So if you could give COP26 a grade, what would you grade COP26?
Well, we're not at the finish line yet, and we all know that you can cram your homework at the last minute. So let's just wait and see about them cramming. But I think as well, we've all been through this roller coaster of a fortnight or a week or different parts, and it's it's very emotional. There's been some really powerful testimonies. And it's frustrating when you hear some of these powerful testimonies and you think, how is that, not translating? But if we take a step back, this whole year in the run-up, there has been quite a lot of progress in terms of, electric vehicles, in terms of, there's been, and that's been across the world, there's been some phase out of fossil fuel subsidies, there's been good announcements on deforestation. It's not enough. We need to keep the pressure up for sure, but we have to build from here because there is only one future.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for speaking to us today. It's been a real pleasure, and we're so happy to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So, our past is really important to us Scots, and being an industrial city, Glasgow's had to adapt and change. We visited famous places to find out how. Glasgow was once known as the second city of the empire, with booming industries in shipbuilding, textiles and other manufacturing.
A big part of Glasgow's growth, the common thing, was the invention, of course, of the steam engine. We know that James Watt on Glasgow Green, he invented the separate condenser, and that gave rise to the Industrial Revolution and the growth of Glasgow. Of course, all of that was fed by coal, and we know that coal has been a big part of the climate emergency. So, more than a century later, we're now having to confront the consequences of those decisions.
Now I'm from Glasgow, and you're walking through the city streets, you can still really feel the industrial past. But we hope that initiatives like COP and other green initiatives will make our city more environmentally friendly in the future.
So I guess we've got a big challenge in our hands in Glasgow, using our universities, our industries, to totally rethink how we're going to use our know-how and our expertise to reduce emissions across all forms of transportation. Glasgow moved the world around, whether it was on ships or on rails. So I think we've got a really good opportunity with COP to think about how we can lead the world again and developing the new industries of the future.
Electric power is the future of transport. Leaving your car and taking the train can cut emissions by up to 2/3. So that's why we're here today in Glasgow Central Station to see how things are changing. Scotland's history may be rooted in heavy industry and emissions, but bit by bit, even if we still have a long way to go, we're making an effort. As we've just seen, even though Scotland's past has impacted our climate, having hope is key. I spoke to Dr. Emily Monroe about her film Living Proof, which explores Scotland's past demand for energy, our economic growth, and how this has affected our climate. What inspired you to make Living Proof?
I'd really wanted to make a film about the environment in Scotland. We've got an amazing collection of moving image in the National Collection at the National Library of Scotland. Most of the films are documentary films, so they tell us something about Scotland's past as it was experienced, as it was lived at the time. And one of the reasons we've got an archive at all is because of a collection of about 150 documentary films that were made between the late 1930s up to about 1980. And these films document Scotland's industrial heritage. And quite often we look back at this material maybe with a bit of nostalgia or perhaps using that material for reminiscence. But there's definitely space, I think, to kind of be a bit more critical about our industrial heritage. So that's really what the film became about, was about how do we talk about our industrial heritage now in the context of climate breakdown.
So is that why you chose to focus on Scotland's demand for energy and economic growth in terms of climate change? I mean, do you feel like we have to take account for, say, our debt and historical emissions compared to other countries nowadays?
We absolutely need to take account of our debt. That's crucial. And I think what we can do as historians or custodians of heritage is to really kind of show these things to the world and say, look, we know that our past has been documented. Let's look at it critically. Let's talk about things like climate debt. Let's talk about climate justice, and how we need to move forward as a society. Because what I found in the archive, looking through the footage, was that we have repeated a cycle of promises, some of which are broken promises. So there's often been a situation where you get a period of crisis. So it could be a pandemic, or it could be a war, or economic depression, followed by this great kind of energy pushing transformation. And then what's happened after that has been growth. And usually that growth is a pursuit of economic prosperity. But it's not something that necessarily has served us very well as a society, because it's always only economic growth for some. And the changes that happened across Scotland in terms of energy production, but also in terms of industrial growth, they don't happen at the same time everywhere for everyone. So there's always people left behind. And that was really important to me as well when I was making the film, was to think about who's actually being left out of this narrative, this corporate narrative that tells us that we need to pursue economic growth at all costs.
This is a very modern person, a travelling man, one of the jet set. Yesterday he flew right round the world. Let's watch him closely. One day soon we might all get to be a little like him.
Hello? What time is it, please? I see. One other thing. Where am I? Scotland.
It's a myth, for example, that working class people in Scotland are not interested in climate change and climate justice. What we need to see is a kind of social movement of solidarity to kind of help us move forward. I do think that a lot of people in Scotland don't really understand yet what climate justice means, and haven't really taken on board, because the messaging's not there from the media, haven't taken on board the debt that we have, in terms of reparations to other countries, in terms of the loss and damage that they're suffering, but also in terms of the extractive policies that we've implemented that have extracted things from all over the world. That colonialist legacy, that's something that has to be tackled alongside our kind of move to a fair transition in our own country.
Wow, that was a great interview, Josh, and there was some amazing archive footage in there as well. Well, earlier this week we went to Mingo Indigenous and we had the privilege of hearing from some of the people worst affected by the climate crisis, yet their voices are the least heard. Mingo Indigenous is a collective of groups, organisations from all across the continent of the Americas. They come here to Glasgow for COP26 to spread awareness of climate change and how it's impacting and affecting their communities.
Los amazónicos nacimos en la tierra, desnudos, topamos a la tierra y el contacto directo con la tierra, los árboles, el agua y las plantas y la biodiversidad.
We were born naked to really connect with our earth, with our biodiversity and our nature.
No solamente tienen que pensar explotar, también tenemos que pensar arreglar la tierra.
We can't just exploit earth, we need to also fix earth.
Y eso es muy importante, no solo para los indígenas amazónicos, sino también para toda la humanidad, porque necesitamos respirar aire puro todos.
This is not only a solution for indigenous people, we also need this all as humanity. We need to breathe clean air.
Y por eso nosotros, cuando quieren explotar nuestra selva amazónica, estamos llorando, estamos gritando, hacemos paro y hacemos muchas cosas, y como hoy que estamos aquí.
This is why when they try to harm our Mother Earth, we are here today to fight against this.
People have come from all over Glasgow and beyond to support the Mingo community at the tramway theatre on the south side of the city.
Bueno, nos sentimos contentos de poder ser escuchados y estar en este espacio, un espacio que, bueno, que la Minga indígena y hermanos de toda Latinoamérica están acá.
We feel very happy to have been given the space for Mingo Indigenous to really be heard.
Y a ustedes les pregunto, ¿por qué están también hoy en la COP y están mirando esto?
And to you I ask, why are you today in COP26 and why are you looking at this right now?
Es porque en su corazón saben que todos tenemos que trabajar unidos.
It's because deep down you know that we all need to work together.
Para que en el 2060, 2070 haya agua y haya alimentos sanos.
So that in the future we have water and crops.
Today I'm joined with Zilke Bultz and Magda Gana, who've been in the Blue Zone throughout COP. Speaking to others from the YMCA, they've said they feel isolated by the negotiators who use terms and language that not everyone can understand. Has your previous experiences helped you prepare for COP?
Hi everyone, my name is Magda. I'm from the Philippines, from the Asia Pacific Alliance of YMCAs, and I've been actually part of the planning team for the Youth-Led Solutions initiatives, and these experience has helped me prepare for to see, because this is my first time at COP, and I understand that this is a very important climate conference that's happening, and leaders from all over the world are coming together to talk about how to address the climate crisis and to agree on terms that would really make a significant difference. So YMCA has helped me in these experiences and has brought me here today.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think for youth that attend for the first time the COP, it's really confusing and overwhelming. That's what my peers have said. For me, it's not the first COP, but still it's really hectic and it's a lot going on. And for every youth that is aiming to attend COP the next time for the first time, I really would advise to them to prepare in advance and really familiarize as much as they can with the content and what's upcoming, and also set a goal for themselves on what they want to follow, because you cannot follow every negotiation stream. It's just too much, and sometimes they're happening at the same time, and to really follow with a purpose, you need to prepare, because they use a lot of acronyms, and in the session itself they would say, we have a reference now to paper 2.3 or whatever, and then you would need to know what that is about. So preparation is key, I think, and otherwise you can have a really great experience, but if you want to advocate and really have a say, then you really need to know what you talk about.
Yeah, and like you said, you've been to a few yourself, but being in the Blue Zone, was it everything you'd hoped it would be?
Other years I've focused on following the negotiations more. This time I didn't have a focus on the negotiations, but more on the logistics. A few years back, 2 years ago, I founded with other team members the Food at COP campaign, this campaign. It's for climate-friendly food at climate conferences, because in past COPs, we have experienced that the food at the venue is not reflecting the ambition of the conference, because you would assume that a climate conference serves also climate-friendly food, but this is not the case. And studies shows that a menu that has a lot of meat and dairy in it is not as climate-friendly as it could be. So we're advocating for a plant-based COP. So the next one maybe can be plant-based, and I have heard that, we were in touch with the COP team and its outreach team, and they said, well, it cannot be 100% plant-based because they need to cater for everyone. So we would propose for the next one at least the default veg approach, so that there is plant-based options everywhere, and then people can still make it their choice. But of course, a plant-based menu would be the most environmentally friendly one.
Yeah. So how was your experience at the Blue Zone?
Well, it's quite overwhelming because one, the venue is so big and I'm a short person, so it's struggling with walking around and doing things. But I see a lot of things going on at the Blue Zone, and like what Silke said, it's kind of hard to comprehend things that's going on. But I could say that one of my expectations is being met when we had this meeting with Secretary John Kerry. We had the opportunity to sit down in a meeting with him for for a short time, but he was hearing our voices because we want to amplify our voices and we want to tell people that we're doing youth-led solutions work. And this is what the YMCA is doing, present in 120 countries. And we want to raise funds for what we're doing, supporting small projects in the community which are led by the young people. And when we had that meeting with John Kerry at the Blue Zone, it was an experience that we really need leaders like him at the COP, at the Blue Zone, I guess, and we're doing it, and it's fun for me.
So being at COP and in the Blue Zone, has it perhaps changed your perspective in anything in particular? You want to start?
Okay, like being at the Blue Zone makes you understand that politicians, they're humans as well, and their feelings, their thoughts, their families, so they're doing their job. So most of them and most politicians that I've met try to do their job as best as they can. And for them as well, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes they also get emotional and they want to have a great achievement and a great result, but sometimes it's a bit more complex than you would assume. And where the United Nations is a really complex organization, and I think that all the parties are at least talking to each other is already a great success. But measuring, like seeing the crisis that we have ahead or that we're already in, it's a bit hard to bring those two bodies, like those two problems together. And yeah, it would be nice if they could decide on actions a bit faster.
I guess it would also be great if there is like something that would ensure that there would be youth voices at the negotiation table. I understand that there are young people also representing different countries and different organizations, and I could see the progress that's being made in the Blue Zone. And outside of it, outside the venue, there were many demonstrations that's going on, and I think that both of these are important. We need to do the talking at the Blue Zone, but we also need to put pressure on them, like the demonstrations that's going on inside the Blue Zone and outside the event venue. It's important, and I think we will wait and see, because the most important thing is what happens after this COP.
Yeah, it is really important to get youth voices and especially women's voices heard. So earlier in this week, Jasmine met some radical girls. So let's see how that went.
I'm Beck Wonders. I'm a doctoral researcher in the field of women's history. I'm also a member of Radical Girls, and Radical Girls is the young women's movement of the European Network of Migrant Women. We are abolitionists, we're secular, we're women only, and we enact feminism without borders.
Brilliant, thank you. And if you could just sum up in a few sentences for our viewers at COPTV, what was the talk about today?
We talked about how important it is for young migrant women to be meaningfully included in spaces of political participation and in decision making, especially in the context of climate justice, because migrant women are disproportionately impacted by the climate crisis. And also when displaced, migrant women face specific violence and specific issues. So it is essential that we actually have a voice and a say in the way the crisis is handled.
We need to understand like the inequality between human beings that is causing all the other disturbance. Like we are treating planet Earth badly because we, especially like male vision, feel entitled to treat other human beings like garbage.
We also talked about the pre-existing vulnerabilities that women have and how they're amplified during climate disasters and as a consequence of climate change.
All of the consequences of this crisis, so for instance, the increase of natural catastrophe, the shortage of food and water, etc. This also impacts migrant women in general, more specifically because in the traditional roles, in many countries, women are still the caregivers, and they are the ones who are going to sacrifice themselves for others.
And I think a new phrase I learned from this was ecofeminism. Could you explain it a bit and what it means?
So I'm an ecofeminist, and there's the belief that within the earth and humans, we're all interconnected. So what happens to the earth is also what is reflected in what happens to humans. So I specifically focused on the ways that we treat animals is reflected in the ways that we treat women, that we're exploited for the benefits of men.
What ecofeminism identifies as well is the way in which both nature and women have been rendered to objects of violence and thereby made vulnerable to exploitation. And ecofeminism is the antidote to that. Ecofeminism says, let's not value GDP, let's value well-being, let's value women's emancipation. And yeah, that's essentially it.
It's brilliant. It's really interesting. Thank you. What do you think is the next step into getting a better education system for girls globally?
I think one of the main points we were making during our panel is that all of the system of oppression are interconnected. So in order for girls all over the world to get better education, we need to acknowledge the patriarchal system that leads girls to be forced married, that leads girls to face violence, including sexual violence, etc. We need to tackle all of this in order for girls to actually achieve education and then be actual agents of change.
We've been asking questions all week, and later on we quiz Angus Robertson. But are we asking the right ones? Here's some questions from the kids.
Hi, I'm Becky. This is about COP26. Why are you stop chopping down trees in 2030? Why can we not do something now?
I'm just a kid. Does that mean I have to fix the adults' problems when I grow up?
Hi, I'm Freda. We've known about global warming my whole life, so why haven't we done something about it already?
I love football. I love sausage rolls. Do I have to give them up because climate change?
I mean, those were some great questions, but I mean, I think we all like sausage rolls a bit too much. Sometimes the questions we really need to be asking is the responsibility on us? I mean, sometimes it should be our politicians, so we can all work together, and the responsibility isn't just shoved on one person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Josh, yeah. And every evening this week we've broadcast from the New York Times Climate Hub at SWG3. But what's it all about? We've been given unprecedented access and we're really excited to show you around.
The New York Times Climate Hub is our outpost in Glasgow during COP26. During the conference, it's a centre for media and is one of the only places that has given a platform to young voices. Over the 2 weeks, events, talks and reports took place discussing the impacts of and possible solutions to the climate crisis. It's a space for people from all backgrounds to mix, press, public and politicians, and to express their opinions, insights and advice on climate solutions in an environment built for new visual journalism. Its mission is to inspire real action from delegates, businesses and ordinary people alike.
My name is Stephen Dunbar-Johnson. I'm President International of the New York Times Company. I think it was back in 2017 in New York where Dean Baquet, who's the editor of the New York Times, made a decision to establish a climate desk and put it in the heart of the newsroom, what I call the belly of the beast of the New York Times. Yeah. And at that moment, it was a very important moment, I think, for us at New York Times. And so we call it the Conference of the Trees. And we have, I think it's 197 species of trees in what we call the think tank. All those trees, by the way, are going to the community garden just over the backside of this building, on the other side of this building, which is currently a bit of wasteland, but that's going to be converted. We're trying to bring together, and we have brought together, business leaders, politicians, scientists, innovators, finance community, but particularly young people. We brought in a lot of young people. We've really gone out of our way to try and give young people a voice and agency in these walls. But what is in many ways more important than the conversations that are happening on the stage, and by the way, this is all being beamed out to a global audience, it's not just physically happening here, we're broadcasting everything, is what I call the serendipity factor around it, where between sessions, people are meeting each other and having conversations. We've been very, very mindful about having a diverse group of people represented on stage and throughout here. So not just diverse in terms of gender. I think I'm right in saying that we probably had a majority of our speakers have been women. But we also want to have a broad representation of voices from around the world, particularly the global south, that are often unrepresentative or don't have as much representation here at these meetings as they should do.
And talking about that, how important is it that young people are encouraged into media and involved in projects like the Climate Hub?
Well, I'm great. I'm really happy that you guys are here. We've had lots of young people. I think it's really important. This is the most important issue of our times. The thing that's given me the most optimism is actually the young people I've met here, both those that are activists, but also those that are doing things. I've met young people, a young person that has developed a hydrogen submarine. I've met somebody who's developing waste management through using black flies in Uganda. I've met somebody who's helping restore the coral reefs. All young people, all doing a lot of positive things. And to your point, covering these stories is very important. So I would encourage young people who want to get into journalism. I think it's all about telling the story. Because if you just drown it out with the facts, what does net zero by 2050 mean to most people? It's still quite an abstract thought. So we need to help build a picture of what do our cities need to look like to be net zero by 2050? What does our transport system need to look like and feel like? What does our food system need to look like? We can do this. It's just the will to do it. And I think storytelling has a very important part to make this grounded for people, so they can understand that actually it is possible, but going and talking about individuals that are doing this thing to make it real for people. And so I would encourage young journalists to try and do that. It's about empathy and curiosity. So I actually think it's a really interesting time to be a young journalist right now.
Hasn't it been such an amazing experience to be here every day? And last night we got the pleasure of attending the closing ceremony where we got to meet Little Amal. What did you think of that, Finlay?
Yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed it. I thought there was a real buzz in the atmosphere, and obviously Little Amal was very impressive. Not so little, but what's even more impressive is the message that Little Amal conveys. But also, yesterday I had the pleasure of speaking to Angus Robertson.
My name is Angus Robertson. I'm the member of the Scottish Parliament for Edinburgh Central, and I'm the Scottish Government's Cabinet Secretary for the Constitution, External Affairs and Culture. And because I do the external affairs, so the foreign relations, international relations for the Scottish Government, I've been spending a lot of time at COP26, and I've been meeting with people who've come from different parts of the world. Scotland has, in recent years, been very proactive on firstly recognising that we have a responsibility. So we're a small country, 5 million people in Northern Europe, and we're not in charge of everything. We're not a normal country, we're not an independent country, so we only have some of the powers to make decisions about the things that affect our lives and how we can contribute internationally, but we're trying to do the things that we can. So firstly, we're trying to do the things that we can lead by example. So we're just trying to be as good as we can be. So in Scotland, we do a thing which is quite remarkable, which is nearly 100% of all of our electricity that we use domestically is produced by renewable energy.
Recently, I was out at the event in Govan where Little Amal met with Storm. How important is it that politicians engage with local community events such as that?
I saw Amal for the first time tonight, and I was really quite struck by it. Obviously, this is oversized figure and amazing movements and features. It helped illustrate the fact that climate change is existentially challenging for people, losing their homes, losing their livelihoods, losing their lives, and we really, really, really need to take it seriously and do everything that we can to stop this inexorable movement towards the Earth heating up to the extent that we can't save it.
Well, thank you very much. Just before we finish, I'm going to ask you a question put together by Primary 6 of Caldine Primary, and their question to the Scottish Government is: how exactly will Scotland become a carbon neutral country, and what date will this be realistically achieved?
So, hello, Caldine Primary. Thanks very much for the question, and it's a really good question. Governments around the world are trying to make targets to make sure that we reach net zero as soon as we possibly can. And the really good news in Scotland is that we have been managing to reduce our carbon emissions, the thing that causes all of the difficulty when it comes to global warming. We've been managing to do that faster than all of the other G20 countries, they're called, so they're 20 of the richest countries in the world, and we in Scotland have been managing to do that quicker than most others. So we're well on our way to trying to try and do everything that we can. It's going to happen during your lifetime, is the answer to the question. And that means we really, really, really need to get on with it, because you're going to experience climate change. We're already seeing changes in temperature, changes in weather patterns. For us in Scotland, that's not such an extreme thing. In other countries, it's a really big problem. And so I'd encourage you to continue your interest with the climate, with the environment. Make sure that people like me who make decisions about it, which is what I do in the Scottish Government, that we make the best decisions that we can, so that the world that you inherit as you grow older is everything that it can be, so that we can have the happiest life that we can all have. Whether you're in Inverness, or whether you're in India, or anywhere else in the world, we need to try and get a fix for this. So thank you for the question, and thanks for the interview.
No, thank you. After speaking with Angus Robertson, it looks like Scotland is well on its way to a brighter, greener future. There are some positive things that have come out of COP26, like the Scottish Government planning to ban most single-use plastics by 2022. But do we really think this is enough? In reality, we need to hit tougher targets for these goals to be achieved. And will politicians achieve this on their own? No. We need to hold politicians and governments around the world accountable and put pressure on them to make the right decisions to ensure a more hopeful future for us all.
Coming up on COPTV, we'll be hearing what Chris Packham has to say about activism. And we'll be joining Jasmine and Finlay in Dundregan as they find out more about Trees for Life. Make sure you look out for Cooking with Rachel as she makes her final meal. Hopefully this one's good. Stay tuned.
Yesterday, we had the privilege of hearing from Chris Packham. Today, we also have another clip for you where he's talking all about activism and the struggles that come along with it.
I think everyone can do what they can, and we shouldn't set, unrealistic targets of ourselves. If there's something that you're not comfortable doing, then don't do it, because you'll do it inefficiently if you're not comfortable with it. So when it comes to addressing issues like the climate, I'm very happy to, take part in demonstrations. I'll get my banner and I'll take to the streets. As long as it's peaceful and democratic and relatively polite, I'm on board. But there may well be lots of people who feel exactly the same frustrations and fear that I do, but that's not their method. And we must be tolerant of the fact that we have different methods. So long as everyone is doing what they can at that point in time, so long as they're on that journey towards progress, then I think we have to be patient with that, tolerant of it, and also show them kindness. It's better to applaud someone for making a small difference than criticising them for doing something not as rapidly as they should. Whatever you feel comfortable with, then do that. I think ultimately, we, citizens of planet Earth, will be the ones that instigate the changes that need to be made. I don't think that we can entrust what is a globally unexceptional group of decision makers at an exceptional time in our planet's and species history. And as a consequence, when it hits the fan, it's going to be down to us to make a difference. And we should all be aiming to make that difference in whatever way we can.
We have talked a lot about nature throughout the week, and it is a crucial part to play in the overall fight against climate change, and especially here in Scotland. Me and Jasmine spent a day in Dundregan talking to Trees for Life about the work they do, their youth programme, and how they get involved in the local community. Hello, I'm Finlay with COPTV, and today we are here in Dundregan at the Trees for Life Rewilding Centre. Today we've been talking to some of their young trainees about the work they do here and the internship they're on.
So my name's Daniel. I'm a trainee on the tree nursery here at Trees for Life. I work every single day in the nursery, planting trees, collecting seed, wrapping orders that go out to where places are planted. At the moment we've had them soaking in water. We've squished a lot of them already. I believe the real term is macerating, but we like to squish them. And yeah, we soak them overnight, they get a little bit softer, we get some more of the seed out, and then eventually we can sieve the seed between the buckets and the different sieves that we have, and it separates them into only seed, pulp, and then a little bit of both. And eventually the seed will be sown.
Yeah, we would encourage young people to look for opportunities like this so that they can go on to make a difference in how our environment is.
I'd love to see nature corridors. So at the moment there's a huge event happening in Glen Affric, basically trying to connect all these scattered pockets. I'd like to see like glens like this, which are already pretty forested, but I'd like to see them like Glen Affric, just covered in swathes of native trees.
So what got you into working with Trees for Life?
I guess just like I've followed them for years, like personal interest in rewilding, and then I've just graduated from university and I wrote my dissertation all about rewilding, about kind of the relationship between people and nature. So it's something I've been really interested in for a long time.
Rewilding is sort of kind of letting nature do its own thing, so we need to help facilitate nature, taking away the barriers that we've put in place as humans.
Having a more reciprocal relationship with nature, so repairing the ecosystems that we have, but also our relationship to nature and the way that we view it and interact with it, I think feels a little bit different to more traditional approaches to conservation. It's got more of a focus on future states and what we could create rather than on the past and protecting specific species and ecosystems.
The future of our land is down to our generation, which is why it's so important to see so many young people getting involved with rewilding and concerned about the climate crisis.
That was really great. Now let's join two other really wonderful COPTV members, Scarlett and Charlie, as they catch up with the RSPB volunteers at the Botanic Gardens.
One message we've heard during COP26 is that nature plays a crucial role in regenerating the planet, and also young people have their part to play too.
I work for the RSPB up in the north of Scotland, doing lots of interning work. I also work with the EFY, which is Education for Youth Scotland, with the RSPB, so we film lots of young people doing good things for nature, which we're trying to make bogs seem more appealing, because it's not as pretty as trees, that's for sure, but it's a really important carbon store in the fight against climate change. So I'd just say go for it, explore what interests you, don't try and become interested in something you're not. If birds is your thing, go for it. If slugs is your thing, then go for it, and it all has its place.
I think getting involved in nature, in that there's so many groups already doing such great work, and you can get in touch with them in your local area.
There are many possibilities for young people to get involved in the preservation of nature, such as learning, communicating and protesting for our voices to be heard.
Well, coming into COP, I realised that we've had 25 of these, and it's made me realise how slow the process is. They've made pledges in the past that haven't been kept, and we're on a pathway to 2.5 degrees rising. So I'm not necessarily hopeful that this one has been much different in terms of the big pledges. Blue Zone's interesting. It feels a lot like walking into an airport. because you've got this big screen where everything's happening and everything you can go and see. And it's hard to pick, it's hard to choose what you want to see.
Communication and awareness is key in the fight for our future.
It's clear that young voices can and will make a difference.
Cooking with Rachel is back, and tonight she's making carbonara.
Hi, I'm Rachel, and today I'm joined with my friend Lucia, and over the course of the week I'm trying to create some vegan and vegetarian dishes.
Today we're going to be making some roast cauliflower and kale carbonara.
First, you're going to preheat your oven to 180 degrees, 160 for fan. Then you're going to get a medium cauliflower and you're going to cut it up into florets. Then you're going to put the leaves off to the side. Putting your cauliflower into a bowl, you're going to add 3 tablespoons of oil and 1 teaspoon of garlic, and make sure to add a bit of salt. Mix all of that together with your hands and then put it into a tray. Make sure they're all evenly dispersed. Next, you're going to throw that right into the oven. In the meantime, add some oil into your leaves and place them in as well. Add some garlic cloves as well. Then, for your kale, you're going to add 1 teaspoon of rapeseed oil and 125 grams of kale into a pan. Make sure to salt it. Give that a good mix. Once good, you're going to leave that off to the side and then you're going to boil some pasta. After 20 minutes, you should remove your cauliflower and leaves from the oven. Place them into a bowl and separate it. One bowl you're going to put into your food processor with some lemon. You're also going to add 200 milliliters of plant-based milk and half a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. You can also add some garlic too. Then blend it on a very high speed. Once blended, all you have to do is plate it. So that's it. Some quick and easy roast kale and cauliflower carbonara. Hope you enjoy!
Wow, Rachel, I mean, do you know what? That actually looked really good for once. How hard was it to pick recipes when the ingredients were in season?
It was actually it was quite difficult because I feel like there's this whole concept around you can just have whatever vegetables or fruit you'd like whenever, because it's imported from abroad, but people don't understand the carbon footprint it takes for all these strawberries to be imported from Spain and that. So I wanted to show you can have a variety of meals within season food, so that's why I picked the kale and the berries were all locally sourced. So I wanted to just highlight how you can have some wee desserts and wee treats and then also have dinners as well.
Great, I mean that sounds amazing. It's really grown over the week, I must say. Your cooking did get better.
Well, thanks Josh. Well, last week I had the pleasure of meeting the President of Malawi at the City Chambers in Edinburgh. Here's how it went.
Hi, I'm Whitney Kunga, a climate change young leader who is much interested in advocacy, and I am from Zeus. As a young person, I am deeply affected by climate change. We can talk of the heat waves and the floods. Recently, I've been going to different schools and towns just to clean. My aim is to prove to the whole world that the fight against climate change knows no gender. And this is why I, Whitney Kunga, I would like readers at COP26 to discuss about gender balance and women empowerment, and that all climate actions should be gender responsive. Yes, yes, together we can.
Hi, I'm Rachel Henderson and I'm with COPTV today at the City Chambers to go speak with the President of Malawi. What are your plans to educate and empower the women and girls of Malawi?
First Lady here, she is passionate about making sure that girls stay in school. Those who cannot afford, we help them go to school. We want to keep girls in school the longest. We changed the youth age to 18 deliberately because we don't want them getting married too early. And so Our plan is to make sure that the girl child stays in school. We are having to do sometimes even things that people say, what are you doing? Because when they get married and they are underage, we go to the villages and get them out of their marriages and go send them back to school. What COVID-19, for example, has done is to expose us, and the girl child has been at the receiving end of a lot of abuse. We had too many teenage pregnancies, too many girls just getting married off, because most homes feel like we have such poverty levels, it's better to have them married off. And so these are some of the things we're trying to do. And our Minister of Education, a lady herself, she is passionate about making sure these things work.
I am Tonge Shawa, a 24-year-old climate change young leader. I stand here with a message of hope that this COP26 is our last chance to redefine the world. The future is in the hands of world leaders. Whatever they'll discuss will be felt by everyone. It's now or never. Please, world leaders at COP26, make it happen. We want action-based solutions to win the fight against climate change.
Your Excellency, Malawi has been underrepresented at recent COPs. What support do you expect from countries with more resources in the next few years?
We may be underrepresented, but I can assure you there's a lot of young people, some of whom you may meet even today, who are following these events. And we want them to know that their voice is also going to be heard and considered. And we want these that are here working on possible solutions to know that the Malawian young people's voice is being incorporated in whatever solutions are being suggested.
Well, it really is a race for change. And talking about racing, I had a fantastic opportunity to speak to Formula E's Sustainability Director, Julia Palais.
All 5 lights are on, and we go green in New York City.
How exactly is Formula E sustainable and good for the environment?
Well, we have a holistic approach to sustainability within the championship. I always tend to say it's a mix in between the racing and the reason. Technology to push more electric cars on the streets. That's, not you today, I don't think you have the driving license, but when you will have the driving license, you will be basically able to buy an electric vehicle. We're phasing out of single-use plastic, we use renewable energy to power our cars, and so on. But also we try and always work with the local community, making sure that we're going to bring them kind of like at the event. We do develop some programs dedicated to gender diversity and inclusion called Girls on Track, to experience what motorsport is and to basically promote STEM careers, so that tomorrow if they want to be an engineer, a mechanic, a presenter or a journalist, they can, even a racing driver.
From one panel of changemakers to another, Baroness Kate Parminter talked to us about being on the House of Lords Climate Change on the House of Lords Climate Committee and having the opportunity to come to COP.
I have to say I'm pretty outraged with where we seem to have got so far. I mean, we seem to be a long way from where we need to be. Don't seem to be anywhere near enough firm actions as opposed to pledges. And we know even with our own government, we've got strong pledges, but they're not on track to meet their current carbon commitment. So, even if we get the pledges, that may not be enough. There was nothing in terms of timing to ban fossil fuels and subsidies for fossil fuels and coal. That's a major issue, and we're still way short of financing those countries who are most at risk and need money for adaptation to deal with climate change. And we're not going to get the deal, and everybody agrees to it. So I was optimistic when I went, really optimistic, but I feel now a bit more outraged that when I see what was going on in those closed rooms with the negotiators, that we're not as far ahead as we need to be. And I think that's a really worrying sign, because not only is it bad for the climate and how we're all going to suffer, it's really bad for democracy, because if people's voices aren't heard, they will reach a point where they feel, well, what is this democratic process? It's not delivering what we need for the future. And that's when I think you really have to start worrying about how we govern our world in the future, and how you can have a system that doesn't respond adequately to what people are saying we've got to do.
Well, it's been a big week. We've had so many highs and lows. What have you guys thought of it?
I thought it was great. Like, this has been really fun, learning all these stuff while being in this environment. What do you think, Zoe?
I think it's been a fantastic opportunity. I mean, it's been brilliant learning all about climate change, especially from those who are affected firsthand, or those who've had such a long experience within activism talking about it. And just, it's so inspirational to be around those types of people. And it's been really inspirational to be around the whole group, to be fair, because everyone has all their different talents. And I didn't know much about film coming into this, and it's been brilliant having to chat with everyone who has different views on everything, and collaborating and making this the way it is. And it's been a fantastic opportunity.
Well, I mean, after this whole experience, we have to finish the only way that we know how.
It's terrifying how politicians haven't done enough.
Han meningen krölig, storien nach elko kutermach sin aum ekenjach asho.
The hard work of scientists has been overlooked for too long. The proof is out there. We now need to just unite behind the science.
We haven't had enough access into the detailing of the agreements.
Was there too much greenwashing at COP?
Was COP really an honest effort to tackle the climate crisis?
How do you know world leaders will keep their promises?
Stop demonising the protesters. They're the ones taking action.
Rich nations to follow through on promises, including the $100 billion.
More transparency from bigger companies and industries.
Just because COP ends doesn't mean that the fight for climate justice ends as well. Climate change is real, and it is very present right now. We don't need change in 10 years' time, we need it now.
What do we want?
Climate justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Climate justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Climate justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
That was something. But yeah, we've had so much fun doing all of this, and we'd like to thank the viewers for watching this every single night. What do you guys think of? What do you think of this?
It was great.
How's it been?
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
been great.
Yeah.
Alright.
Bye.
Bye.
Stay tuned.